just in talking with you, I can tell that you're an extremely collaborative. You work with your end users, the consumers of your data, and really bring them along, which is fantastic. And that's why you're successful. The question I have is within your own team, going back to your data and analytics team, how do you recruit and retain A players? How do you find them? How do you keep them motivated and just challenge them?
Sure. Well, I think the secret to recruiting, first and foremost, is relationships. Whether those relationships are within the community that you serve, or where you're based, or with recruiters. It starts there, and it starts with setting those expectations, and especially with recruiters, that going back to the partnering conversation, right? They understand what my culture looks like. They understand what the organizational needs are. So first of all, they're going to select out any of those candidates who don't have that same collaborative vision, or they don't have the desire to push the envelope on technology. If it's somebody who, if they come in to interview with me and their first question is, how are you going to train me? Probably not a fit for my team. Because in this organization and in this industry, right, things are changing so rapidly. I want you to have a passion for data. I want you to be so excited about what data can do for you and for the customers that you want to keep pushing that. My kids play lacrosse, and as well as other sports, but from a lacrosse perspective, I have a passion for the stats. I'm the one who on my kids' games, I actually work with the statistician, and I've put those into spreadsheets, and I graph it, and I might send out things to the coaches to help them visualize, where we have success. How do we do on turf fields versus grass fields, right? That's my passion. But everything I do, every conversation I have, whether it's personally or professionally, there's this whole data little lens all the time and little connection. And so when I'm interviewing for people, I'm looking for folks that have that same kind of passion and are ignited by how exciting data can be. And you can tell because they get animated. They start to talk through, gosh, it was so great when I created this solution. It's one of the questions I ask, right? Tell me about a great project you were on. And when their eyes light up and they're excited about it, that that's going to be someone who's going to help to drive your strategy. I also make sure to leverage with my internal interviewers that they're folks on that same journey, right? They have the same vision, they understand our strategy well, and they understand the culture. And so they help us to continue to refine that candidate pool. Once they get here, and this is my leadership style is a little bit different because I want to keep that excitement and passion growing through the team. Some of the things that we've done, and I picked this one up from consulting. I had a great consulting mentor with John Bostic, who's in Cincinnati, and was part of his organization for 15 years. He was an avid reader. I didn't buy into it. When I was in my 20s and I started his organization, I'm like, I just got out of school. Why do I need to read? But through him, learned that you continue to connect to new ways of doing things through books. And so we actually do book clubs here, and we pick a topic. I'm not the I facilitated the first few. Now I have my team members facilitate them. And every time we do a new title, and we just did Grit actually 2 weeks ago. So when we do a new title, we then connect it to how does that change the way we want to interact with our team members, with our customers, with our end users. And so there's a connection point that comes back. The other thing that we've started doing recently, and it was actually an idea from one of our team members, is show and tell. She actually brought up the idea. She said, look, remember when you were in kindergarten, you were so excited about something that you did that you just wanted to tell everybody? What if we did a show and tell? And so we're now doing that as well. We do it every 2 months, and it's almost like a science fair / show and tell, where no matter what you've worked on, right? Because a lot of times in projects, you get project exhaustion. You're working on how do we get to the deliverable date? Okay, then what's the next go live date? Okay, when do we have to do testing? Right? All of those things, and they're very structured and scripted, and you miss the nuance that along the way, I figured out this piece of code. I figured out how to render an object on a report, and I spent 3 days on it. And when I was done, I was like, this thing is so good. And so we encourage our team members that it didn't have to be a deliverable. It's something that made you especially proud in the last 2 months that you want to talk to the team about. And so that gets them really excited to be able to share with their peers. We've also used it as ideation sessions where people come back like, oh, I need to do that on my team. Can you bring that over? And then lastly, it's really about the recognition and making sure that you recognize the little wins and the big wins. Give the team a time to collectively pause and breathe for a minute, which is really hard in these fast-moving organizations. And so whether that be peer recognition, whether it be from their manager, whether it be an email that comes from a senior leader, finding those ways to keep reminding them that they're so important to your team makes them want to stay, or at least I hope that's what they want to do, is they want to stay because of those things.
That's fantastic. It sounds like your team would be an incredible place to work. And I can tell by the way you came alive talking about working with your team that if they're anything like you, that there's a lot of energy there, which kudos. That's fantastic. One last kind of a overall question, actually two more questions, but what is the biggest challenge you've encountered during your data journeys? Is it the people, process, or the technology, or a combination? What have you seen? And with your background, you've probably seen all three of them be challenging. But
I want to go faster. We never can go at the pace I think that we want to, because there's so many competing projects or edicts that come from the organization. You can't predict that there's going to be an acquisition, right? You're not part of the acquisition team. You don't know that that's going to come and disrupt what's on your path. I think that it's not necessarily that people are the challenge, but rather it's the resource constraints that we run into. We have so many competing projects and so few resources that are available, even if I leverage partners. When I go through resource planning, one of the things that I look at is who from our internal team can lead the partners. I need a team full of folks that can lead so that I can get scale. But then that requires that everybody understands your vision, that everybody can execute the vision in the same way, because you're only as good with those teams as the folks that can connect all those dots. So that's a huge challenge. The other thing that I see is that, again, from the vendor partner connection, right? They pepper so many messages, not only in my inbox, but in my end user inboxes, that the assumption is that what we do is easy. And you give somebody a tool like Power BI and they don't understand why you haven't taken care of everything in the organization. It's just so easy. And I'm like, okay, but it's not, right? I mean, we know that ETL, ELT, whatever you want to call it, any kind of data integrations, there's a lot that goes into that. I have one vendor that wanted to tell me that you no longer have a need for ETL people because his tool has AI built into it. And all you got to do, that's my favorite, all you got to do is you just connect a source and a target and you're done. I'm like, well, that makes a lot of assumptions about my target system, makes a lot of assumptions about my source system. I said there's still somebody who has to analyze that these two things need to talk to each other and what points connect. Like, yeah. But once you do that, I'm like, yeah, that's the hard part, right? So I think, that certainly is another challenge to us. And then I think competing projects in general, right? The priorities of the company are going to change. And I think you have to stay true to your strategy while you go through the reprioritization of projects, or while you, if you get that acquisition, as long as you keep remembering that this is the path that we're on, and every project that we take on is going to adhere to these same strategies, the same vision, you will incrementally get your builds done. It just may not go as fast as you like because of all of those. So it's not just one big challenge, right? They're all wrapped up in one another. I have a hard time separating those out from one another.